10% cap on any one shareholder, and that's not unusual here in New Zealand. Air New Zealand has a 10% cap on any foreign shareholders, and Telecom has a 10% cap on any individual shareholder in New Zealand or overseas. And what the government's doing today is we're indicating that we will have such a cap, probably around 10% on the mixed ownership model companies.
And how do you limit foreign investors' interest in these floats?
Well, the government's made it very clear that we want to have very strong New Zealand ownership. We expect that New Zealand shareholders, including the government, will account for about 85 to 90% of the people who will own shares when these companies are first floated. What we have indicated is there's a portion there that may go allow participation by foreign investors. That's an important part of saying, well, look, we need to make sure that we get enough people bidding to get the price right, so that the New Zealand taxpayer gets good value for these shares.
So do you stagger the IPO? You stagger the offering? Do you have a first and initial offering only available to New Zealanders, and then that smaller portion gets offered at a separate time?
No, the government's thinking at this time is that when we float, for example, the first company, we will have New Zealanders are first in the queue, and we will also invite, though, a number of foreigners will be able to participate in bidding for the shares. That's to make sure that we get the best value for New Zealand taxpayers. But when we come to allocate the shares, we're making it very clear that New Zealanders are first in the queue, and that we expect that over the program, New Zealanders will own between 85 and 90% of the shares, including the 51% that the government owns.
Okay, but how do you give effect to that first in the queue? Because with respect, it's a bit of a slogan. Do you mean chronologically first in the queue, or do you mean they get a lower price? I mean, how do you give effect to first in the queue?
Well, what the government said very clearly is if New Zealanders apply for shares, they will get them first in the queue.
So what if New Zealanders are oversubscribed then, Minister? So if New Zealanders are oversubscribed, like the Auckland Airport issue, do you have an A and B share issue, or do you say to foreigners, sorry, New Zealanders have oversubscribed, you can't come and buy these shares?
If New Zealanders bid for these shares at the right price, then New Zealanders could end up owning 100% of what's being floated. What we've indicated, though, is when you make an assessment of what the likely level of investment from New Zealanders and super funds and KiwiSaver is going to be, we may end up with a small proportion of foreign investors involved in that as well, in order to get a good price for New Zealand taxpayers. But what's quite clear here is that when these companies are floated, it's the government's expectation that 85 to 90% of the shareholders will be New Zealanders.